For today's case of the week, I actually just wanted to take a moment looking at shade guides. This is the new Vita 3D Master Linearguide, which is my favorite shade guide to currently use, and we'll look at that in a second. Before we get to that, I just wanted to show you a shade guide that I grabbed out of a dentist's office who's a friend of mine. And it looks like this has been run over by a tractor trailer. You can get an idea of how old it is. This might even be an identifying number from dental school that's been scratched in here, but you can see that it's very old. And when these shades, there's several different studies online showing that when these shades have spent any amount of time over the course of a year in a cold sterilization solution, they end up actually changing shades. And so what you see as an A2 or an A3 on your shade guide probably is not going to match what we have in the laboratory, where we never have to put our shade tabs into cold sterilization because they never go into a patient's mouth. So I really want to encourage you to at least get one new shade guide every 12 to 18 months and have that one there if it seems like you're getting kind of erroneous results from your laboratory. Now, most of the time people do arrange their Vita shade guide by value, but I want to show you a new way to maybe consider doing this. And this is just based on the numbers here at the laboratory. The numbers of shade requests that we get for almost any product. And you can see that I've actually arranged this shade guide according from starting over here, the most popular shade down to the least popular shade. And we'll put these values up for you on the screen so you can see this. But clearly the most common shade prescription that we get is for A2, and then we have A3, then we have A1. And let me stop you there for a second, because the three most popular shades we have are A2, which is about 27% of the shades, A3, and A1. So really, when it comes to picking the correct shade, if you eliminated everything else and just went with the A shades, you would not go far wrong. I mean, the vast majority of the restorations that get requested are A2, A3, and A1 in that order. Number 4 is B1, and that's a little bit crazy. Because B1, how can that be such a popular shade? In fact, if you watch our shade taking DVD that's currently online at glidewelldental.com, you'll see that even according to Vita, B1 actually exists outside of the natural color space for natural teeth. So B1, in fact, is not a real tooth color, yet it's the 4th most requested shade that we have. And why does that happen? It happens because a dentist will let the patient see the shade guide, and they're like a moth to the flame or a mosquito to that purple light that kills them. Patients are always attracted to the B1 because of how light it is. We know most of the time that A2 is going to be correct, but still we get requests for B1, and it's our largest remade shade. So if you ever wondered what shade that dentist request has the most remakes, it's the B1. And it's only 4% of the requests we get for shades, but it's 11% of our remakes. And so B1 is the most remade shade that we have in the laboratory. So be very careful when you choose B1. In fact, a lot of times you just want to take B1 off the shade guide if you're going to let the patient see it as you hold it up to their teeth. And people think I'm joking when I tell them that I have a special shade guide that I like to use. And I know not everybody has one of these. This is the Detola shade guide. I should patent this. In fact, I'll send in something right when we're done with this and get my patent. This is shade guide with all A2s. And when you hold it up to the patient's mouth, you just keep your fingers over the A2s or put a piece of tape over it. And since we know A2 is great for almost anyone, it's kind of the universal shade, I like to hold this up to the patient's mouth and move it back and forth as I'm trying to decide the shade. And I'll say to the patient, which one do you think? And I'll pull up this one like this is the closest. And they go, I don't know, those all look exactly the same to me. And I go, yes, to the untrained eye perhaps, but to a color specialist like myself, I can see the subtle differences between all these. It's either this one or this one, it's this one. And the patient goes, that's amazing, I can't even tell the difference. And I say, well, that's why I get the big bucks. And that's why you're just a patient and I'm the doctor. So dentists always say, you don't really have an all A2 shade guide, do you? And I absolutely do. And you know what? You wouldn't go far wrong by having one of these like I do. And I will start to market it soon, my all A2 shade guide. But in all seriousness, if you just stick to the A shades, you're not going to go far wrong. If you take out B1, you're going to eliminate patients trying to force you down that road of going to B1 because it is the most remade shade we have. And when you take out B1, look who's next. A3.5. This is one of my favorite shades too. I love A2 and A3.5, especially for posterior teeth and anybody who's over the age of 40, because they're either currently an A3.5 or they will be in the next 10 years. And you're just leading them off like a quarterback leading off a wide receiver. You're just throwing the A3.5 ball in front of them a few yards, because they'll have a few Starbucks a day for the next 6 years, and then they will, in fact, be an A3.5. And then you can see D2 and D3 next to the A shades in terms of how common the requests are that we get for these. And then you see the ones way down here at the end, the D4, the B4, the B3, the C4, the A4. Most of these just never get asked for. There's not many teeth that match this. So I was just playing around with shade guides one day, and I thought, you know, it'd be interesting to arrange this according to popularity. And by the way, the least remade shade, here's B1, the most remade shade. The least remade shade here at the laboratory is A3.5. Very few remakes for A3.5. Of course, it's being used more on posterior teeth than anterior teeth, and I get that, whereas B1's mainly for anterior teeth. But using this Vita Classic Shade Guide, even Vita admits that this has not been updated since 1956, and it's pretty dated, and it wasn't based on science, which is why the Vita Linearguide is how I'd actually take shades today. And when you take out the value guide for the 3D Master, you'll notice that there's only 6 shades here, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And basically when taking a shade with this, you just hold it up to the patient's mouth, and whichever value family it falls into, you know, which is very easy to do. When you start looking at something to see if it's a 2 or a 3, all you're looking at is how light the tooth is, and you go, aha. Or maybe it's something a little bit lighter, and you go, okay, well, that's a 1. It's in the 1 family. And so you hold that up, and there's your 1M2, and that's what that looks like. And once you've decided that it's in the family group, the value group of 1, you go to this other shade guide. There's one that has a 0, 1 on it, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. So we'll take out the 0, 1 because this has the 0 and the 1 shades on it. And you'll notice that for the 1, we only have 2 choices. We've got the 1M1 and the 1M2. And so if it falls in the value of family number 1, it's either one of these 2 shades. And if it was, let's say we decided that it was number 2, we'll take out the number 2, and you'll see we have a few more choices here. But really, in my experience, any one of these is going to be correct. Very slight differences between these shades. This is the big deal, is getting the value correct. Once you get the value correct and you get into this family, now we're starting to split hairs a little bit more about which one's correct. The beauty of this system versus the regular Vita Classic system is that this has been scientifically laid out. This makes sense. If you watch our shade taking video, you'll see all the science behind this and why Vita made a huge step forward with these 3D shade guides. 3D shades now make up about 14% of the shades we get here in the laboratory, and the reason it's taken a while to catch on is the original 3D shade guides were difficult to use because it was a 3-step process. Now it's a 2-step process where the first step is simply identifying the value of the tooth you're trying to match, and then you go to the shade guide for that specific value family, like the 2 family, and then pick which shade matches the closest. So for these reasons, because of the accuracy and because of how well these shades match natural teeth, this new Vita Shade Guide has become my favorite shade guide when I'm working on patients, and I would encourage you to investigate it and take a look at it because it really is a nice system.